Is there anyone that you've always wanted to interview, but you never did, or you haven't got the chance yet, or somebody that's left that you'd love to?
Kylie Minogue.
Really?
At one time, this guy who worked in a music shop somewhere in Soho was a bit goofy with glasses, and I am led to believe that that was the very young Elton John.
How would you like to be remembered, James Whale?
I tell you what, just being remembered is good enough.
Virgin Radio 80s Plus.
Well, this is a complete treat. James Whale, hello.
Stevie, a complete treat for me as well. A good, whatever time of day this happens to be, I can't remember.
Welcome
at the awards.
to Virgin Radio.
Yeah.
Virgin Radio 80s Plus. Congratulations on the award. 50 years.
Okay,
My
there's
goodness.
no need to actually go on about the length of time I've been doing it. I'll tell you one thing you probably didn't know. I was going to be the first ever breakfast show presenter for Virgin.
Really?
A company came out, they got the Virgin contract, franchise, whatever you call it, and me and a lady newsreader who sadly died some years ago were chosen to do the breakfast show, and it was going to be called Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
And I will leave it for people to work out which one of those I was. But then somebody else nicked it, took it over, put Chris on instead. The rest is history.
Yeah, and that was it was close, but
Yeah.
it never happened.
Yeah.
Well, it's an absolute thrill, to be working in the same building as you. I've embarrassed myself countless times when you've been in, I've been on air.
Yeah,
and I
you
said,
could
James,
actually stop doing that now,
Okay,
because
all
that
right
is
then.
quite embarrassing.
I'm still terrified of him. I mean, after, and
As
I know
he
him, and I
turns
think
and
you're a
looks
friend.
at Lady W.
How easy was it coming up with these tracks? Because you used to be a music radio guy when you first started,
Well,
didn't you?
I started off as a DJ in the 70s on radio. I started off as a DJ in the clubs. And I can't remember musical names and everything else. And they said I had the sort of voice to do late night. So I got put on late at night. It's really dull playing kind of, and trying to send your audience to sleep. What's the point of being on the air if you're going to do that? So I started taking phone calls. And in those days, they just developed the technology to put phone calls on air. So I said to the boss at the time, do you mind? I don't care really. He said, nobody listens after 6. It was what they called the 6 to 6 format. Yeah.
Almost like the graveyard shift back in the day. But you completely, and we're going to talk about this as we go through the tracks, you completely kind of revitalised that time of the day, and in a revolutionary way. We'll get to it, though. Yeah. The first song on your list.
Well, this was sort of picked for me by my lovely, beautiful wife, Lady W.
Who we must say hello to in the corner. Hello, Lady W.
She's knackered her leg, look. So we're having to look after her. And it's just a beautiful song from back in the 80s. And when she reminded me of it, just reminded me of her. And it's the Waterboys, called Whole of the Moon.
And you got married to Lady W recently, didn't you?
Well, not that, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Because, I am heading off this planet in the not too distant future. So, and I wanted to marry her. And she very graciously said yes. But I think she thought then I was quite wealthy. But didn't you, honey? Yeah. But then, as she's an accountant, she suddenly realised she'd made the wrong decision.
I realised that well before.
Oh, right.
She's got you both very loved up, and I've seen you before. James always has Lady W on FaceTime.
Yeah.
And the amount of times I've come out in the office and you've said, hold on, I'm speaking to her. I know that you're a big pussycat. James, here's a huge question for you. The 80s in a nutshell. How do you remember them?
Well, I was really quite young, and I was at that time wanting to get from radio into television, because that was what you wanted to do in those days.
And you were the first person to do that, weren't you? I mean, I have to jump in. You know, so many questions. How did you do that?
Well, completely by accident. I'd presented some TV shows, but I'm not the normal sort of looking TV guy, and I'm not very vanilla, thank goodness. So I was thinking about this, and then one day I got a phone call from somebody called Ian Bolt, sadly no longer with us. And he said, James, I love your programme. I often sit in my car on the way home just because I've got to listen to the next caller, which is good. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
And he said, I want to put you on TV doing the same thing. And I said, I don't know who you are, off and put the phone down. And I rang
James Wells style.
I rang my agent. I said, have you ever heard of anybody called Ian Bold? She said, oh yes, get in with him if you can. He's the main producer at Yorkshire Television.
Right.
So after I'd done a reasonable amount of grovelling, we became quite good friends. And he did do that. I mean, it took a bit of getting on the air because the bosses didn't like the idea. Confrontation?
Isn't that funny?
No, we should be nice to our audience. We should always make them feel, hello, how are you? We hope you're having a good day and listening to what you're
looking great.
Yeah, golly. So we went on the air, and I think at the time there was loads of new equipment coming out, and the radio and TV audiences were wanting more and more stuff, but the bosses didn't want the new, and the unions, they didn't want it either.
Right.
So I think we were given all this stuff to try and prove that it wouldn't work. Well, quite the reverse happened. We went on the air first couple of weeks, got amazing ratings, until 1 a.m.
Yeah. You started the ball rolling.
Yeah.
You were the first.
Yeah, and we did that for nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
Yorkshire Television produced the programme. Other members of the ITV network around the country took it, but didn't want to pay for it. It's always the way, isn't it? So ITV said at one point, about 3 years in, you can't have it. And they said to me, I'm so sorry, James, we're going to have to cancel it. And fine, okay. My agent said, don't worry, ITV will take it over, or London Weekend, or whoever. And so I went and signed a contract with them, and a guy called Mike Mansfield, do you remember? Mm-hmm. Cue the music. And Yorkshire came back to me and said, we're only joking. What have you done? I said, you said we weren't going to bring the programme back. Oh, no, we're just trying to get money out of the network.
Oh, okay.
I said, well, you should have told me. So that's what happened.
Well, I'm going to fire loads of questions because there's two things I really want to speak to you about. The kind of, the introduction of speech radio, plus the fact that you started the whole televised nature of radio being televised. Tell me why you wanted Bros. When Will I Be Famous? This is at the end of the decade. Were you a Brossette, James? Were the Grosh bottle tops?
I was probably slightly too old to be a Brossette, but I had in 1999 I'd been diagnosed with kidney cancer. And I was living sort of on the not on the river, but next to the river in what they call Docklands then. Mm-hmm. And one of my next door neighbours was a guy called Luke Goss.
Right.
And we became really pally. And so Luke and his wife and me and my wife hung out together. And every time I had to go and have a checkup every 3 months then, they say, how did it go? And if it always seemed to go okay. And I said, okay, good, we've got to go and celebrate. We jump in our cars. Because one of the things I did do after I was diagnosed with cancer, I went out and treated myself to a sports car. And thought, if I'm not going, I was then at the situation I seem to be at now. And off we go. So Luke and his brother Matt, are particularly nice guys, completely misunderstood. Two people that the media destroyed for a while, and it's difficult. They're doing it now to Prince Harry, doing exactly the same thing.
They kind of build them up and then shoot them down, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But these boys owned the last part of the 80s, didn't they? And you kind of forget just how big they were. I
first met Luke, funnily enough. I can never remember if it was Luke or Matt, but it was in one of the first years, sort of 89, 90, and I was sitting with my then producer in a restaurant down in Brompton Road somewhere, I think, and suddenly this black limousine pulled up, and this guy got out, which I can't remember Matt or Luke because they're very similar looking, and they were in those days. Just came rushing up to the table, grabbed my hand, says, just want to thank you, man. I love your show. Just all I wanted to say.
James Whale is with me. It's my 80s playlist. James, I'm going to fire a quick question to you. There's going to be several Anaraki questions during this week. Do you remember the moment that you said, I'm not playing music anymore. I'm just going to I want to take calls. I want to do speech.
Yeah, it was it was very difficult at the beginning. I like playing music, by the way, don't get me wrong, and on the TV and radio side of it, I'll have live music on, but just sitting there, and don't let me be critical of music radio stations here on Virgin, but some of Virgin, like this program, it's not just because now you can make your own playlist. You don't need a radio station. Yeah. So what people want to hear is speech radio in different genres. This is a music speech station, and I think the days which still exist of the 15-second intro are on their way out. Thank goodness. And I suddenly, what they said to me on Metro Radio in those days, and I'm sure all the people who did that, I was about 22, and I think they must all be dead. It's quite popular in the ratings. So you could do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but you can do phone calls from sort of the last two. It was a 4-hour show, the last 2 hours of your show. And I think, what a ridiculous, stupid man, a retired headmaster in charge of a frigging radio station. So anyway,
it's always the case, isn't it?
It is. And so eventually I just started doing it, and I got a bit bolshy, and I said, I think you'll find the ratings are better with the phone calls. Yeah.
Didn't they just suddenly, overnight, they shot up, didn't they?
Well, yeah, there was, the first time I decided to do it, a bloke rang in and was very racist. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought he'd ring in and say, James, could you play me a record like this? And this bloke rang in. I could do a Geordie accent, but I didn't think I will. And rang up and said something really racist, to which I said, I can't remember, it's 50 years ago, small-minded little piece of shockingness, and cut the bloke off and went into a record. It was quite good, little, and I was hauled in, thought they were going to sack me, I don't care. They said, we were, James, but look at this, and showed me, I think it was the Journal or the Chronicle in Newcastle, and I made the front page.
And remember, nobody had heard this kind of radio here.
No.
You were the first person to do this.
I didn't even know what I was doing.
Really?
Yeah.
I heard, though, that you played the nice guy to begin with, right at the start.
I think I still play the nice guy. People say you're the rudest man on radio or television. I think you could give that to Piers Morgan. I am nice. Aren't I a nice person, really?
I mean, I think you're lovely and you're charming, but the first time when dear friend Ash introduced me.
He's my radio husband.
He
or is it wife? I'm not sure.
You two have been through thick and thin. We need to talk about you two in a bit. But I was very, very nervous because I've heard you for over 25 years. But you're lovely. You're lovely. You're supportive. You're kind.
I believe everything I say, but I do. I mean, some people are really, really boring. If you're going to do this job, and they'll say, I'm a journalist, I don't have to do it, and so they're boring. The journalists you remember are the ones who have an image and project it, and you listen to what they have to say.
Let's talk about Queen, The Great Pretender. I love the fact that you picked this song.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because this is the first time this song has been picked.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Everyone goes for Gaga, Radio Gaga. We've had One Vision, Bohemian Rhapsody, kind of, we're 80s plus. Tell me about this pick.
I mentioned my friend Peter Straker, who was in the original version of Hair. A friend of mine, a friend of Lee's. He was also an exceptionally good friend, should I say this? Of Freddie's. They were big pals. And when The Great Pretender, he was one of the cleaning, and the other guy was the drummer from Queen. My mind is going at the moment. It's quite early in the morning, this. And, is it lunchtime?
10 to midday.
So I remember going and seeing Freddie a few times, and we were in me, Lee and Strakes, I think, a long time ago. So we were in a little restaurant we used to go to in Kensington High Street years ago, and who should pop in but Freddie.
What was he like? You're the first person to have met him that I've spoken to.
I didn't really meet him that well.
Right. What was your first impression?
He's quite shy, I thought. And didn't, wanted people to do different things. Anyway, he came in, had a few words with Straker, and I left, and it was quite funny. And actually, the evening got worse because my other friend at the time was called Cleo Rockus. Do you remember Cleo Rockus?
Yes. Friend of Kenny Everett's, wasn't she?
Yeah, and then later on mine.
Yeah.
But
she was on your show, wasn't she?
Yeah,
of course
quite regularly.
She was.
Straker and Cleo decided to swap clothes, there was a lot of dancing on tables, and that's how I remember the 80s. And then Peter was what was the name of the drummer of Queen? I can't remember. I should.
It was Brian May, wasn't it?
No, he was
Roger
the
Taylor,
lead.
John Deacon,
Roger Taylor, I think.
Roger Taylor.
Yeah, and I think Roger was the drummer, as I said. And he and Straker and Freddie were dressed up as cleaning ladies, weren't they?
Yes.
And it was a song called "The Great Pretender."
Amazing. What do you think about what happened to Freddie? And what he went through.
I think it was very sad, and like all diseases, eventually they find a cure. And I'm on this trial drug, which isn't going to do me any good. And this is probably my last few months. I don't know if it's difficult to know, isn't it? Really.
How are you doing right now? Can I ask you, how are you? I mean, I know you, last time I saw you, you'd just been through a health check and it was a good one. And you said to me, I can only go by these kind of bi-monthly checks or however long they are. But right now, how's it going?
I'm feeling pretty at the moment, to be honest with you. Bending down, picking stuff up, walking. And the last check wasn't that good, was it, hon? No. And our oncologist, brilliant man, who said, a lot of people said nearly 3 years ago you wouldn't last more than a few months.
Right.
But he said, I think we've more or less come to the end. So I'm on this trial drug. I think hopefully they will have found out lots to help it in the future. But there's not a lot more they can do. You just have to sort of wait and see what goes wrong, and maybe they can do a bit more, maybe not. But I might get a year, mightn't I? I might get sort of a year or 6 months. I don't know.
You're just so brave, and the way...
No. Brave, you just got to handle whatever life throws at you. You can't just, oh, terrible, I can't cope with this. I mean, you can't. And I'm not that brave. I have days when her ladyship will tell you, when I'm really difficult. I even have days, it's difficult to imagine me being in floods of tears, but I have days when I feel really down. Well, one of the reasons is because, my wife of 50 years nearly died from cancer. Her husband died of cancer recently. That's how we got together. And she's just an amazing lady. I never knew. I actually have never really... I did have a great relationship with Melinda, my wife, of long standing. But I never felt the same way. Why am I giving you this interview when I was saving this up for one of the newspapers to pay me?
Because I love you.
Oh, shut up.
What keeps you going, though, when you wake up in the morning and you think,
having to feed the dogs. But actually, I don't... No. Her ladyship wakes up about 2 hours. We have this deal at the moment where she's away in her own house because she has a proper job to do for 3 or 4 days a week. Although when you can't cope anymore, don't worry. And funnily enough, when she's at home, I miraculously feel better. And I think she thinks I'm putting it on to try, but she does have a business to run and carry on with. But I've forgotten the question you asked me.
The
anyway,
strange thing is, James, and I say this every time I see you look fantastic.
Makeup.
It's not, because you said earlier you're not wearing any. So
I haven't really got any today, have I? No, I wish I had.
You look so well. And it's hard to believe that all of that is going on. I mean, just in case someone doesn't know, tell me what you've been diagnosed with.
Well, 25 years ago, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer, and I had my left kidney removed, and they said you'll either live 2 years or maybe even 20 years. And so I've been going for over 22 years. So, and then when they found the kidney cancer had come back in the other kidney, sadly, they had to take the left kidney out because the tumour was the size of a football.
Wow.
But I didn't have any pain.
No.
Peed some blood, and eventually went to the doctor. Didn't even rush off to the doctor then. I thought, oh gosh, I wonder what happened there. But this one spread to my lungs and to my brain and to different places. Did you know that when you get a cancer, that when it spreads, the tumours are also... I don't have lung cancer tumours. I've got kidney tumours in my lungs.
So it's all intertwined and spread, is it?
Yeah. Very interesting. That's right, isn't it? My medical... Yeah. Good. Okay, because I quite often get it all wrong.
Well, long may you continue looking as well.
Well, as long
are.
as I look and feel like this, but if I feel them, let's quickly go.
Let me fire a couple of questions about, you mentioned the word interview. Is there anyone that you've always wanted to interview, but you never did, or you haven't got the chance yet, or somebody that's left that you'd love to?
Kylie Minogue.
Really?
Never met Kylie Minogue. Would love to interview Kylie Minogue.
Why?
I don't know, really.
She's lovely, isn't she?
Have you met her?
I have met her. But
Everybody's met her.
She's just lovely.
Yeah. I'd like to do an in-depth interview with her song. See if you can get Virgin to give me an hour with Kylie.
An hour with Kylie. Okay, we'll get it. What's the interview that you're kind of most? I'm going to put you on the spot here. The interview that you're most proud of doing in your career.
Spike Milligan, because for the TV show, Spike agreed to do quite a serious interview, and we went round to his place in London with a small crew, and you can see it on the internet and the World Wide Web or whatever. But I had a lovely chat with Spike Milligan, and he was very open and revealing, and I just thought that was great. I had one with Margaret Thatcher. That was okay. I'm not really known for those sort of things. Actually, one of my mates at the time was Stringfellow, Peter Stringfellow, and we used to hang out a lot, particularly after the show on Talk Radio at the time. We used to go round to the club, me and Ash, who has been with me on the radio for a long time, and we would go round there and have a meal at 1 o'clock in the morning. And then one day he rang me and he said, "Would you come down and look after Margaret?" I said, "Margaret who?" He said, "Margaret Thatcher. We've got a fundraising night for the Tories." He said, "So I've had to take a lot of the flesh away. Would you come down and host her table?"
What was she like?
She was very entertaining, because I knew her daughter, Carol. Was it Carol? Yeah.
Carol.
Quite well. And she was very entertaining because her PA, an elderly lady, said, "And who are you, dear?" And Margaret said to her, "Oh, he's James Whale. He's quite controversial. Good friends with Carol. How are you?" And so that's how she was.
Have you got a favourite radio station that you've worked for?
Talk, you know.
Because I always associate you with TalkSport.
Yeah.
I mean, I moved to Bristol in 1999. I had no friends, new city. I only had this radio that was an AM, and you were doing at this time, at the end of the 90s, a 6-hour show from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. And I got home, and James Whale was my company through my tea, you know, for a good 6 months until I met friends. Yeah. But you've been a part of so many people's lives. So I always associate you with TalkSport. Now Talk, which starts in 2016.
I've been on lots of little radio stations, and I was going to say the proudest thing is I've been employed for 50 years. Not on the same. 25 of those, over 25, have been with the Talk brand, and my engineer and general dog's body was a guy called Ash, who was very funny. Then cutbacks as always are, so Ash became the producer. Just me and Ash.
Yeah.
Because Ash is very chatty, and we had somebody in the other room answering the phone calls. I thought, well, we don't actually need to do that, so we'll get rid of them and just have Ash, so he has no time to think.
You and Ash are such a great double act, aren't you?
Yeah.
And how did that start from day one?
Yeah.
Because he's so, I mean, when you meet Ash, you're like, it's Ash.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you see is what you get with Ash.
Well, as you know, in every control room, there's a microphone. And so I said to him, "Why don't you come on the air and we'll have a chat until the phone calls start coming?" And phone calls always have come in, touch wood, I'm glad to say. We just hit it off.
Yeah.
We don't socialise.
No.
At all,
No.
hardly.
But you love each other. And that's
I'm not
what
prepared
I like.
to come out on this programme, okay? So we...
I'll pay you a bit more money.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you will.
But I'm sure on evenings I listen to all 6 hours, and I never heard you falter or get bored or just lose interest or the attention span wane or whatever. You are the consummate professional.
Yeah, well,
and you're always engaged.
As you can see, conversation is not a problem. In fact, if Nadine will tell you that if I see people not talking, and I mean, the other night we were watching a movie, and halfway into it or something, she stopped and said, "Right, can we turn back to the beginning of this? Because you've talked over all of it, and I have no idea what's going on."
Is this true, Mrs. W?
Completely true.
Does it drive you crazy? AC/DC.
I should be a DJ, shouldn't I?
You are.
Yeah.
You are.
I want to go back.
You shook me all night long. This to get the, the cup and the saucer.
This is a
rattling.
great song. I wanted to do Highway to Hell. But Lady W said this is a better song. And
Really?
You like the obscure one, so
Yes.
this is obscure.
Are you a rocker, James?
I'm an everything. You know, the trouble when you get older is your hearing goes a bit funny. And one of the things you don't like is loud music or loud chatter in restaurants. Or
It becomes irritating,
it
doesn't it?
hurts. And I don't think and it really is quite difficult. Now, Brian, as you know, has got real hearing problems, got hearing aids.
Yes.
And one of the things that people like us get is called tinnitus. But I recently found that is something hereditary in my family too. And having cancer, one of the side effects of some of the treatment is tinnitus. So I've just got it whacking off in my ears.
How bad is it?
Pretty bad. So I just keep talking, then I can't hear it.
Does it wake you up at night?
No, not that bad.
Oh, okay.
Is yours?
Well, I think mine's just started, but I do wake up at night and I can just hear, that kind of tone.
But I don't know how long you've been doing this. Quite a long
26
time.
years now.
And you still try to pretend you're 18. It's not going to carry on.
The makeup, come on, I'm trying, James.
Yeah, but you are going to get it if you have these things on your head all the time or stuck in your ears. But anyway, back to AC/DC.
Go on, introduce this. Come on, you're on Virgin Radio 80s Plus. Go on, James Whale.
Okay, this is AC/DC and shook me all night long.
What was young James Whale like?
What was young James Whale?
Yeah, what was young James Whale like? Did you always have that thing of like you wanted to be the centre of attention, or you wanted to broadcast, or you wanted to speak to people? What were you like as a teenager, a young man?
I hated school, hated it. I'm dyslexic, so I don't really. So I was always considered to be thick. I failed the 11 plus. I left school at the age of 16 with no qualifications, except my brother says I got a GCSE or a CSE or something in religious knowledge. I can't believe that, but I never went back to pick anything up anyway. So,
So you're self-taught?
Yeah.
Brilliant to hear.
Annoys her terribly. Doesn't it, darling? Eh?
Yeah, it does.
You can come and sit here and then we can... Couldn't you? Bring your chair here.
Absolutely. Come in, Mrs. W. James, we've got a couple of questions for you. Career questions, almost Anaraki questions. TV or radio? If you could choose one of medium.
I like both, but I think I really like radio. I like to do TV in a radio manner.
Well, you were the first person to do this, weren't you?
That was back when my...
Was that your idea? Wow.
Well, no, to be fair, Ian Bolt, the producer I told you at the Yorkshire Television, he and I suddenly seemed to have the same idea, because I was thinking, this could be quite fun. I could do it from a radio studio, as Talk TV most of the time does, because it makes it more intimate. And it makes it, like you're involved.
So it must be a joy for you seeing what Talk TV's become.
Absolutely. When Talk Radio first came on, I was doing my show. I was going to give it up. But as I said before, they didn't give me a job for the first year.
Yeah.
But I did give it up for a while. And now we're kind of back to it. And I hope eventually people will realise, and they will, because, we've been on just over a year, not much more. And there are a few things that perhaps need tidying up, but basically, 24 hours a day, long as they get the idea of playing recorded stuff out of their minds, it'll work.
Did you ever think that you would have another crack at it and being on the radio and on TV on such a big channel, here in the news building with Piers and Jeremy Kyle and people like that?
And James Whale.
Indeed.
They always forget him, don't they?
The originator.
Yeah. When I was coming home, do you remember this or not? Well, I wasn't very well, and I was doing a lot of the programs from home, wasn't I? Yeah. And I wanted to do the Saturday night show. I still do now. And I think we did the first one, and I had in my mind how it would work. And I've now got an excellent producer called, Chuck.
Yes, Chuck Thomas.
It's like I've been with him for years.
Nadine, welcome to Virgin Radio on Virgin Radio 80s Plus. Mrs. W. Tell me what you think of James and his journey and his bravery.
Don't just be nice.
Well, no, he is the loveliest man. No one's ever been kinder to me. He's just a sweet, lovely person, which you might not think from watching him on television.
It's not doing me much good.
And I must confess, I don't like watching him on television. I can take about 10 minutes before I have to turn him off because I start getting annoyed. But he makes my.
But that's what he does so well.
I know.
You see, it's working.
He even does it to me, even though. And at home I have to put him, no, you can't go into work mode. But he's just an amazing guy, and he's dealt with this illness so bravely and so well. And whatever they've thrown at him, he just takes it. He's just, I mean, last week was quite funny because some of the treatments he's had have been quite, intensive, and he's been through lots of horrible machines and all that sort of thing. He's always been so brave. Last week he had a tooth out. Oh my God, was there a fuss?
That was really painful.
Oh, I know.
That was really painful.
I had to do more nursing for the tooth out than I've had to do for anything else.
I can still feel the hole. And I had a wisdom tooth out a long time ago, but I've never had a tooth out. And it was just this bloke's just a pair of pliers wiggling. Oh God!
Yeah, that's serious, mate. Do you realise though how much hope you must have given so many other people? You must get lots of people who get in touch and say, that you've been an inspiration. Because the news that you've received, actually, over the last kind of 25 years has been quite relentlessly bleak, isn't it? And yet here you are, and people hear you week on week on the radio, just living a normal life, getting on with it. That's been, ever since I've known you, that's been your philosophy. You must have helped so many people.
I mean, it helps. You can't get away from it sometimes, can you? So it's been a part of my life, as you say, for 25 years. 20 years ago, I started a charity called Kidney Cancer UK. Anybody wants to give money to charity?
It's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Give the website address.
kidneycanceruk.org. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not very good at remembering things.
You've done amazing work through the charity, haven't you?
Well, I don't know. We've arranged if we've done a few things, haven't we?
Yeah, you've been their sort of figurehead.
I'm the founder.
Yeah.
Yeah. But people don't know. We started doing this podcast about 20 weeks ago, and it's just called Tales of the Whales.
Yes.
It's not very long, 10, 15 minutes long.
You've been sending me the episodes on a Saturday,
I have,
and they're a
when I
joy
remember.
to hear.
Yeah.
They're like literally 12 minutes, 15 minutes max, aren't they?
And she's
do you rehearse it?
No!
No, not at all. It's just us. I can't understand why people want to listen to us two having a chat, which is all it is, really.
It's brilliant. It's like I'm in your living room.
Well, it's in our bed.
Well, it's either in the bed. No,
well,
it's not. It's normally because I'm either sitting on the bed or we're downstairs in the sitting room with the dogs everywhere.
What do you mean you're sitting on the bed? You're in the bed. What are you looking at me like that for? We do it in a normal way. She doesn't even know that we're doing it sometimes.
So you just you press record. It sounds very, very, very natural.
Rustic.
And rustic. Is it going to be something that you're going to continue to do?
Till I snuff it, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, last week was a bit sort of a traumatic one, wasn't it? Because we'd had the bit of bad news. So
explain what the bad news was.
Well, just really that there isn't really any other treatments to try, and this one's not really working as effectively as they'd hoped, and that there is a finite time, and we know roughly what that is. So,
can I ask?
Well, they said in February we were told about a year, and then last week Professor Tom sort of said, you're not going to be going anywhere next week, but you won't be here next summer. So we are sort of.
And it's very funny because I feel sitting here, when I get up, I go, oh, my back hurts or whatever, don't I? But sitting here, I feel fine at the moment.
When you're working, you come on a Saturday when he's going out to the studio, it's just like a new man.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it must be really important, the fact that, you've got normality in your life and a routine and everything. But can I ask you, and I feel guilty of asking, I'm only asking because I wonder, and it's on my mind, what do you think about death? Are you frightened of it?
Not really. I'm planning the funeral. It's going to be a great do.
Yeah.
But you must come, mustn't he?
You can send out invites.
Well, I don't know.
I do love your sense of humour. It will be an honour to come.
What you're thinking of doing is a party, isn't it? A pre-funeral party, because why miss out on the fun of your own wake? Have it earlier. So there's a party coming up soon.
As only James Well could.
I've got to find a sponsor first because we're running out of money.
If you need a disco DJ, I'll happily be there and do it for you for free of charge because you're an amazing person.
Okay, well, we can have that, can't we? Good. We'll put that down. He's offered. Put that on your thing. So how do you deal? We can't. You know, that's what we're all going to die. I mean, if you want me to turn it around the other way, you're going to die.
Yeah. And I could before you do. You just never know in this great thing of life.
That's an interesting point. We've had quite a few friends go since I found out I had cancer, and there was not much chance of beating it this time.
Yeah, some friends will be just lost really suddenly, so you do never know.
No.
Yeah, and younger people. And then when I find when somebody talks to me about their son or their daughter who has cancer, and they are not going to live to be a teenager, I think, well, why am I? I'm not frightened. I mean, we're all going to die. There's no point in thinking about it too much. And we've seen our partners go, so we kind of know what to expect. I don't. You know, I could sit there thinking about it, and sometimes do for hours if I'm on my own.
Sometimes when you've been on his own for a couple of days, he does get a bit melancholy then. So I have to kind of, shiver him along to perk him up a bit.
Shout at me
when he's sitting there deciding who he wants around his bedside. I was like, no, let's not think along those lines.
Well, you two are really great together, and it's a joy to see you two together. And you must know how much love and happiness you brought to him. I see him FaceTiming you all the time when he's in the office.
Do you?
He's like, Steve, will you just leave me alone? So it's wonderful to meet you, and wonderful to have you in, James. Elton John, sad songs. First of all, a few questions for you.
Go.
What do you think of Glastonbury? Did you see the Glastonbury performance?
I'm not a big fan of mud and of songs and then all the bloody stupid political nonsense that comes out.
I knew this was coming. I asked you this question.
Yeah, did you?
I'll set you up.
Yeah. That comes out of the mouths of inane idiots who know nothing at all about anything. Apart from that, we were lucky enough to go and see Elton at the O2.
What do you think?
It was brilliant, wasn't it, hon? I managed to get almost to the end, but I had to leave because
it was a 2.5 hour show, wasn't it? And there are no gaps.
No. And I think we left about half an hour before the end because I was feeling a bit knackered.
Did you see the Rocket Man?
We did see this.
It's like a 10-minute version, isn't it? Beautiful.
Yeah. Absolutely. And he still got it. His voice was really strong. Really strong, because people had said, his voice isn't as good as it was. He really went for it. And it was brilliant. But I met Elton once years and years ago, before I got on the radio or TV.
Yeah.
I was the DJ in Top Shop in Oxford Circus. In fact, that whole thing was my idea.
Now, this is how it all started, I hear, that you wanted a job in one of these, like, in-store. It's how I started, one of these things. Tell me more.
Well, I was a very young father. And my wife and I were pushing a baby buggy around Topshop, and I at the time was a disco DJ, and I thought, well, this is really like a disco, isn't it? That's when they were just turning. The big stores were trying to emulate the little boutiques of the King's Road and Carnaby Street, and I thought, what this needs is a DJ. I hadn't really thought about radio then, DJ. So I went and sought out the manager. Who was a guy called Ralph Halpin. And I found him and I said, what you need is a DJ. And he said, well, that's a good idea. Do you want to do it? I said, yeah, what about a couple of lunchtime sessions? And he said, yeah, okay. Well, we've got this old disco gear out the back. And so I went along, talked to whoever does and they turned it up, and I did that for about 6 months. And I thought, and what happened was little boutiques that were, independent companies inside Topshop started coming up to me and saying, we're just doing a special on this while people in the store. Can you give it a plug? And it really worked well. And I thought Radio 1 then was just around the corner.
Yeah.
I thought if I start doing it, because in those days a DJ was just like somebody on the radio who, there was none of this never speaking. In fact, you probably spoke more than the music you played.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, to cut a very long story short, I used to sort of finish there, go down the road to a little place off Wigmore Street. It was a coffee shop, and hang out down there with a few people I thought could get me into the music business. And I think at one time, this guy who worked in a music shop somewhere in Soho was a bit goofy with glasses, and I am led to believe that was the very young Elton John.
Reginald
Dwight.
Yeah. Amazing.
Because I was there for a bit, and all these people had come in and all talking about the music and everything else.
Do you remember him? Do you remember?
I remember this goofy character, but whether it was Elton John. He was quite quiet and quite sensitive.
Right.
Couldn't really have a joke. And then I had to leave to go up to, I was the DJ of the Sundown in Tottenham Court Road.
Amazing.
So I had to get me big bag of records and trek up there.
It's amazing to hear, isn't it? Can I just thank you? Thank you again for coming in and doing this and for being so supportive. The amount of times I've been on Virgin Radio and you've come in and you've had a chat and I've had little problems and I've asked you about it and you've always been, you're such a lovely guy. Thank you,
Did you leave the union? Good. As I said.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is a huge question. How would you like to be remembered, James Whale?
I tell you what, just being remembered is good enough. Because I do, you asked me, so I'm fiddling with my glass case. You asked me what did I want to achieve or what in the beginning. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And I do remember actually thinking at the time, it was the 60s, everybody wanted to be in a band and everybody was rushing from one place to another. And I thought, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought to myself, I really like for people to have known that I was here. I don't know why, but I thought when I die, I'd like people to say, oh, I remember him. What was his name? Or something like that. Yeah, I'm not, I'm the first person to get nighttime TV and radio going. Whatever anybody else tells you.
Thank you, James. Love you lots. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.